Hello everybody, I'm Cassidy, I'm the Hippie Catholic. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe to be part of the conversation. So this is the part 3 of the 3-part mini-series that I'm doing on my channel that's examining the Billie Eilish conspiracy theory. Basically, for those of you who haven't watched the rest of the series, please watch the other 2 previous videos. If you want just a kind of a crash course, if you're new here, hi. There is a conspiracy theory going around that Billie Eilish, the teen musician, sold her soul so that she could get quick fame. And also just like a lot of the themes of her music have to do with the dark side of the spiritual. I think that it got a lot of Christians in particular asking questions. And if you want to hear my thoughts on like the actual conspiracy theory and hear more of a religious deep dive, again, please watch the other 2 videos. So basically in part 2, I dove into a non-Christian religion that promotes the idea of selling one's soul and views possession as a ritualistic goal, and that is voodoo. So I guess I'm going to segue from that. Something I said in part 2 was that statistically speaking, there are more cases of women being possessed than men, and this is agreed upon by both Catholic exorcists and religious scholars alike. Why is that? This video isn't going to be so much of an academic deep dive. I did more of that in part 2. This is going to be kind of more of a stream of consciousness type video. And I could make more videos about this topic as well, but I wanted to introduce this topic somehow. Why are women more possessed than men? We also find that women are more religious than men statistically. So I guess I'm just gonna share with you guys, I guess a little bit of like my own perspective. So in the town that I grew up in, there actually was a case of a woman who got full body possessed. I don't have permission to share her story, so I'm not really going to here. Thankfully, they had access to a Catholic priest who had experience with exorcisms, so the church was able to intervene and help deliver this woman and her family. But basically, in the Catholic world and just in the world in general, full body possessions are not common at all. Like, they're actually extremely, extremely rare. And unlike Pentecostal traditions or other charismatic traditions, the Catholic Church is very, very weary when describing something as possession. Always when somebody calls in and says, hey, I think I'm possessed, the church always ensures that that individual gets a psychiatric evaluation in order to rule out more secular things. I really suggest for you guys to read a book called Hostage of the Devil by Malachi Martin. He was a Jesuit priest and exorcist. He's a very controversial figure within the church. Some people love him, other people hate him. He has some radical traditionalist ideals, I think. At the same time, he has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to spiritual warfare. I think it's important when we're reading authors and stuff to realize that we might not always agree with 100% of what they're saying, but that doesn't mean that their work isn't salvageable or doesn't have something worthy to offer. People are so willing to throw out pieces of art or pieces of literature because they contain messages or themes that are contrary to their worldview, and that's valid, but at the same time you're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I wanted to bring up that spooky story that happened in my own town because I wanted to relate to you that once again it was a woman who got possessed. There's this theme, and there's this theme within Father Martin's book as well, of women tending to be more targeted, I guess, by the supernatural. Nobody really knows why. And that was a big question for me when I first started going on my spiritual journey. I'm like, why is this directed towards women? Why is this a thing? Why is this a gendered thing? I read so many problematic answers. A lot of them were unfortunately from other Catholic writers going back different centuries and things like that. I've heard women are more naturally sinful than men because of Eve and because of the original sin. I've heard that women are weaker than men. They can't be the head of their own household, and because they're weaker, are more targeted by these negative entities. That's not problematic at all. Women are somehow less clean than men because women menstruate. The statistic that shows that women are more possessed than men has been used to justify all sorts of gendered issues and all sorts of oppression. It was hard for me to read a lot of that stuff that tried to, I guess, explain why that phenomena exists. It was very hard because as a woman, I do not believe that women are inherently weak or inherently dirty. That's just not true. It's not of God, it's from fear. I mean, this seems elementary, but I know that those ideals can't be true because they're so based in fear and they're so based in hatred of something. And as we know from what Jesus taught, good trees don't produce bad fruit and bad trees don't produce good fruit. And honestly, what's the greatest form of oppression? Possession. You're taking away somebody's control and agency over their own bodies. I feel like that the whole concept of evil itself despises women especially. Another concept that I want to discuss in this video is the concept of the vessel. Like the exorcism of Emily Rose or the exorcist or anything, women are seen as vessels. And this isn't just in cases of possession, I mean this is just in society. Women are always seen in relation to what's around them and in a way that men are not. This can be both a good and a bad thing. Being a vessel means that you're bringing things into existence, you're bringing life into existence. There's something very sacred about that. But also the shadow aspect of the vessel is this idea that women have no identity other than what they're related to. A lot of times it's even hard for people to conceptualize that their mothers are aware people with their own identities and their own experiences. I'm going to be referring to the archetypal life cycle of a woman, which is the maiden, the mother, the maga, and the crone. I feel that women are more assigned to these archetypal labels than men are. In Genesis, we see that one of the curses that God places upon women is for women to be subordinate to men. We definitely don't look at a curse and think, well, that's the way things ought to be. And I also want to say that the book of Genesis, especially the Genesis creation story, is written as poetry. I want to do a whole video about the book of Genesis because it was really, really important to my reconstruction of faith. I think that people are mistrusting of Billie Eilish because of her identity as a young woman right now. If you just look at the way media perceives teenage girls, we hate their music, we hate their petty drama, we hate that they like boys, we just hate teenage girls. When girls are becoming young women, a lot of times society will literally put tarps onto women's bodies. You literally have to cover that up because your body is so inherently evil. Another story time. When I was growing up into adolescence, I was in a community that really, really was internally misogynistic. Many of the most misogynist people that I've met have been other women. I developed a woman's body at a young age. I was 13. I started to get, bigger hips, bigger chest, just things like that. And I started experimenting with makeup because it made me feel more attractive. I would have mothers come up to me and tell me about how I was dressing like a stripper. I didn't even have a concept of intimacy, but society threw this label on me and expected me to know that since I had a woman's body now, that automatically I was out in the world to tempt and destroy men and society. It was like my body was being seen as this hurricane, that would destroy everything in its wake if it wasn't contained. Actually, I was liberated from that in my church environment. One time I was asked to do a spiritual dance thing. It was a dance routine with this other girl at my Catholic church. We were doing a prayer dance. I was wearing a tank top and some yoga pants and stuff. As I mentioned in my response to Ryan Responds video, I'll put that in the card above, I was used to having parents and adults look at my body creepily when I wore certain dance costumes. I was always in discomfort, but I was also used to it and I loved dance, so I kind of just rolled with it. And my parents, they were so used to it as well. I never felt like my parents ever looked at me in that sort of way. So I'm really, really grateful for that, because I know that some people were not that lucky. When I showed up to the church in my, navy blue tank top and my yoga pants that were so scandalous, my parents were concerned. They had seen me be shamed. I was like 13, 14 years old, and they had spoken up against it, but ultimately it didn't really matter what they said. And they didn't want to see me hurt anymore. At that point, I had been like suicidal. They didn't want to see me hurt anymore. They thought, hey, you know what, it might be better for you to change shirts so that you don't have to subject your body to that sort of scrutiny. And one of the women at the church who was going to be reading like the Bible passages for the Mass came up to my parents and I and said, no, what she's wearing is perfectly acceptable. She should keep her tank top on. It's perfectly appropriate. It felt so freeing when she said that, because I was like, oh my gosh, my body isn't evil. Like, I feel like that one of the first lies the enemy ever told was that our bodies, especially women's bodies, are innately evil. And so I danced in that church without fear, with my tank top and my newly budded boobs, and I didn't feel afraid. I'm connecting this to Billie Eilish because she wears like her baggy clothing and stuff to hide her breasts, because she's 17 and she doesn't want to be scrutinized for them. And unfortunately, there's been times where like her boobs have slipped, and then paparazzi have like taken a bunch of pictures and everybody acts like, oh my gosh, it's so scandalous that she has boobs. And I just see myself in that experience. I can relate to that feeling of feeling like the societal pressure to cover up, to contain the hurricane, as I like to say. It's so terrible, and it's so oppressive, and it's just horrible. It's horrific, honestly. We tell women over and over and over again that their bodies are not their own. When you tell people that their bodies are not their own, the whole concept of something evil possessing their body doesn't seem that abnormal. It's a cycle. There's a cycle to trauma. There's a cycle to sin. And oftentimes we'll find that oppressed people feel a sort of sense of comfort when they find themselves in another oppressive situation, because it feels normal. That's how the cycle keeps going. And I feel like that our modern society also doesn't even have like a concept of what makes a cycle. Women's reproductive cycles are absolutely maligned. The cycle of pregnancy isn't respected. Women have to fear losing their jobs in the United States if they become pregnant, and then we wonder why abortion rates go up. It's absolutely heartbreaking. I firmly believe that we will not find the answer to why women are more possessed than men by looking at thought processes that continue to oppress women. If you guys are still here, you're probably asking, well, what do you think, Cass? An answer that's held by many, if not all, Catholic exorcists is this: women are more possessed than men because the devil hates Mother Mary. And actually, when we refer to Revelation, we see this enmity between the dragon, the devil, and the woman. The dragon wants to devour the woman's offspring and go after her, but he cannot find her. He cannot oppress her. She gets away. She's protected. Because the enemy can't go after Mother Mary, the enemy goes after her daughters. And it's not because women are inherently weaker. It's because women are absolute forces of nature, are absolute forces to be reckoned with. If they weren't, why would they be considered such a threat? And we don't even have to see this on a supernatural level. We can see this just in our societies of we see men so fearful of the feminine aspects within themselves and fearful of women and fearful. There's just so much fear. I think that fear was what drove people to make this conspiracy theory about Billie Eilish. I feel like that fear is what drives people to have mistrust of women in the first place. I know that fear is not of God. We also have to respect that the whole narrative of Christianity was possible because of the consent, the freedom of Mother Mary to say yes to God. As Father Richard Rohr says, you need freedom to have love. Where there is no freedom, there is only coercion, there is only fear, there is only death. I not only believe that there are very physical oppressive forces looking to oppress women, but I also believe there are very oppressive spiritual forces looking to oppress women. In order to go against this, we must learn to trust ourselves as women. We have to learn to trust other women. We are not against other women. We are not against God. So yeah, I hope that this was an interesting conversation for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're financially able, please consider supporting me on my Patreon account. As a small creator, I am currently not monetized, so any little donation goes a long way. But if you're not in the financial position to donate, please share this video. Please share it with a friend while you're having a cup of coffee with them. Any little bit helps this platform grow and helps this platform become more diverse. And thank you so much for joining this conversation. And thank you so much to my lovely patrons for helping me financially support this platform. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I am Cassidy. I am the Hippie Catholic. God bless and be spooky.